Okay, welcome to the video on how to create a land use map using ArcGIS online. So first thing you want to do if you're signed in is click the waffle board here and look for Survey123. Survey123 is the program that basically lets you create a survey to map things, and like I mentioned in the text of the VLE that this is the easiest way to kind of create a land use map for it. We have two options when creating a survey. So you're going to be clicking create a new survey, and you have the option of using the web designer or Survey123 Connect. You want to use the web designer, okay? This is for when we get a little bit more advanced with things. Basically, we're going to click get started. And it's going to ask for a name and some tags, so you can just call it whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it VLE land use, and I'm going to call this one 2 because I already have one. And tags, I usually just give it that kind of the course code of CGC 1D, to be honest. And then we're going to, if you wanted to write a summary of it, you could do that, and then we're going to hit create. Now, when it comes to creating the land use map, you have a couple of options. This way, you can have the students go through this entire process and they create the survey and they use it themselves, or you can create, the survey and share it with all your students. Typically, I start with that second option first because we'll work on something collectively as a class, and then maybe for an assignment later in the course or in the unit, they can create their own. Now, when we get here, it's basically asking us to, to create a new survey. What do we want to do with it? What kind of things that we want to add? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to add, obviously, is a map. So we're going to click on the map. And it's going to ask, okay, what is the label here, or the question? And so I'll just write location, all right, of land use. You can do whatever you want, okay? You can give a hint to the students. So this is where you create your polygon. Okay, in case they forget for whatever reason. But the key thing here is the drawing tools. We need to change that to an area. So I want to keep that as this type. And we can change then like our map. So we could do like, imagery if we wanted to. We could change it to street view if we want. I kind of like the topographic one personally. And then we can also do like an address or place. So I'm going to just kind of put in Ottawa, Ontario here, and we'll get in all of Ottawa. And you can, zoom in to kind of take a look at what that would look like. We're over in the Gatineau side here now. Okay, but so this is why I like the topographic map. But again, if you want, you can change it to imagery with labels. You could do streets. It's really up to you, kind of decide on what you want to do. But we're going to go with Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Okay. We're going to make sure that this is a required question. All right, so students have to do this to be able to submit. Okay, and then we're going to click save, just so we make sure we save this. Okay. Now, the next thing we want to do is we're going to go back to add, and we want to figure out, okay, so what do we want to do next? And basically, we need to, we're going to create this polygon, but we need to know, well, what is this polygon, right? What kind of text is it? What kind of land use is it? So we're going to give a drop-down choice here, okay? And here we're going to go and ask it, what type of land use? And if you wanted to, you can give a description here. What's interesting here is you could actually create a link to like a document or a website or a Google Doc, whatever you've got, to maybe remind the students of this is what residential looks like, this is what commercial looks like, etc. So you can do that for the students, and you can write in here all the different options. But I prefer the batch edit, especially when we're doing a lot of different things. Just makes it a little bit easier. So I kind of go with my students. We do different densities, but of course that's up to you to decide what you want to do with your students. But I'll do real medium, high, We'll do commercial, institutional, parks, okay, you could do open space, you could do transportation if you wanted to, and do like bike lanes. You could do mixed, commercial, and residential. Okay, and you can just do as many as you want. All right, and now it fills it in for you. Again, we want to make sure that this is a required questions. All right, students have to do it. And when it comes to creating your own, I typically don't do the allow other, because what ends up happening, especially when it's shared with students, is they might start typing in lots of different things, and then we're mapping various things, or maybe they missed parks and then they spell it wrong or something like that. So I try and force them to pick something that's on the list. Okay, and then we're going to hit save again here. Now at this point, you could be done with the survey if you want. You could say, okay, you create a polygon and you tell me what land use type it is. And so you could be done. But you could also go to add, and you can go add photo, which, where did photo go, or add image. Okay, and you could have students write upload an image. Okay, you could also go add multi-line text, and you could have students to describe what you see. Right, and so here students can give you a description of what they are noticing in regards to the land use type, right? And they can give you a bit of a description. And then the next option, which is kind of my favorite thing to do, is to do some additional drop downs, in particular for the commercial land use. While commercial is great, it's nice to know. We might want to know a little bit more about that type of commercial. So we could go, what type of commercial? And we can say, we could batch edit this to be something like restaurants, pharmacy, grocery store, whatever, right? And here we might actually want to allow other and let the student kind of type in something in particular if we don't have it. And if students start putting, like, if they, one person puts barber and another puts hairdresser, you can change it later so it's all the same. And again, we can make this a required question if we want. But the key thing here is, if we go back to our what type of land use question, we can click here and we can set a rule for it. And so we can set a rule that if a student picks commercial, then the question of what type of commercial will show up. And we should set a second rule as well for our mixed between commercial and residential as well. And again, go what type of commercial. So this question will only show up if a student writes or clicks commercial in question 2 here. All right, those are my favorite things to do, and that is basically how we create the survey. Once we're done with it, you can, could change the appearance if you want, look at some of the settings if you want, but I'm basically going to go right to, and we can preview it if we want as well. Actually, the preview is kind of interesting as well, because it lets us look at it. Okay, what does my survey look like on a desktop, but also what will it look like on a phone? And what will it look like on a tablet, just in case you want to take a look and see what it will look like. Next, we're going to publish it. We have to publish it so we know before we can share it or do anything like that. So, and it will take a few seconds to publish. Okay, So now the map has been published, and now we have to go to part 2 of the activity, which is sharing the survey. So you have to share the survey with your students, which means you have to like collaborate with them. And basically, when we go to the share the survey, we can have a couple of options. We have a link we can give people. We can give a QR code, and you basically give students the options of how to open it. Right, open it in the browser directly. I like to just get them using the app and have them download the app. If you don't want to go do that option, you could click this one and have it between either a browser or the app. All right. Then you have to decide who can submit to the survey. And in the earlier module, we talked about creating groups, so you can pick which specific groups you want to be able to submit to the survey. And basically you want to allow them to have multiple submissions, and if you want to, you can decide when to open or close the survey as well. The share results then also, like, okay, so students can submit it, but maybe you want them to be able to like look at the results. And so that's why we have to go to the share results and then again decide who can view the results of this survey. We need to select that. And that's, again, you can pick your group here and decide from there. So once we have a survey created and shared it, then students can start and go and put in some data and put in some information. And I'm just going to go open up another one that has some records to show you your next step, which is the Analyze tool. So the Analyze tool gives us a little bit of information. It gives us, some different columns. We can look at bar graphs, pie graphs, etc. We can look at types of commercial activities take place, etc. So it gives us a little bit of information here that's kind of interesting to look at. The breakdown is kind of interesting as well. But the more interesting, which I think is more important, is actually the data tool. And the data tool is here where we get to see all the different data that was collected, right? So for this example, like I only just did six different ones to kind of give you an idea. But basically this is where we get to see all the different data that was collected. Okay, and so we have a couple different options here. We can take this table of data if we want. We can export it all if we want to, like an Excel sheet. What's really interesting on the table here is if we hit the plus sign, you'll notice that it actually collects a lot more data than just what was shown here. One of my things that I like to do with the students is do the shape area, and we can actually get sorry about that. Let's try that again. Okay. Shape area. Okay. And we get the size of it. And we can then actually have our students calculate how much size or space is dedicated to each shape. So that's kind of interesting as well. But outside of that, what's the most interesting out of the data tool here is the Open and Map Viewer. Because here is where we get to actually create the map. So when we go to the map, we kind of want to zoom in, and actually I'm just going to click on this because I can go, I should be able to click zoom to, center on selection. Right. So as you can tell, this map really doesn't tell us much of anything. So what are we going to do? Well, first and foremost, the first thing we really need to do is rename this layer, because this doesn't tell us much of anything. So we want to rename the layer to something a little bit more useful. Obviously, something as simple as land uses will be fine. Part 2 now is we want to actually change the style of the map. And to change the style, we're going to click right here, change style. And the first part it wants to know is, okay, which attribute do we want to, what do you want me to show? What do you want me to map? you know, and I want to basically show what the type of activity, what type of land use takes place here. So I have to scroll down to what type of land use, click it. And it basically says, okay, perfect. And I'm going to separate it all into different colors for the different land use types. All right. If you don't like those colors, we can go and change it in our options, which is great. We can just click change symbol here, and we can actually change the colors. So for example, one of my things that I like to do is, in particular for like the residential, is I might go with the low density, might get one shade of red, and the medium density, okay, might get a little bit darker, and the high density, if I can find it right here, perfect, we'll get like this version of red. Okay. And you can change the order as well to make it make a little bit more sense for your students, etc. But you got lots of options there in terms of changing the colors and for them. And they've got some color ramps you can choose from as well. Key thing to remember is you have to click OK. If you don't click OK and then done, it's not going to remember these things for you. Okay, and now you can click legend and you can see it all show up in the legend here. Okay. Now, in step 3, what we can do is we can also configure some labels, right? So we can configure pop-ups, which is basically saying, when I click on it, what do I want to show up? All right, so we can change the title to like just information, or whatever we want to call it, and we can basically decide what things we want to display or what things do we not want to display. Okay, and I basically just leave it all, but you can play around with it because there might be some that you want to change. What I find really interesting is the create labels option, which is we can decide what do we want to have on our labels, on our land uses. All right, so the one label feature right now we have on is creator. Well, then we don't want to know who created each of these. Well, maybe you do, but for this case, I don't think we want. What I think is better is to create maybe the is the type of land use. We can tell it, but we have a legend that kind of already does that. So maybe what might be better is for the commercial is we do the what type of commercial takes place. All right, and then we get those listed. All right, and then we can play around with some of the settings on that. We click OK, and now we have some labels on our map as well. Now, we might want to save this layer. That way we can use it again. All right, and we'll just give it a title, tell it where to save it. Okay, I'm not going to because I don't need this particular one, but that's how you do it. And then when you're done with the map, you just go click save. All right, and again, now we save the map, give it a title, tell it where we want it to be saved to. All right, and save it, and then students then can share. And that's literally how you can have your students create a residential land use map or just a land use map of their community. It's pretty straightforward, all done within Survey123. And yeah, I hope you find that video useful.